small market.
I have to
Like working the streets.
yeah, we
Like I said, even though I still work, I'm a small so when my chief retired,
because that one I feel
I was the same. And we ran,
it's very
did
interesting.
pretty good. We fed off each other.
Always learn something new.
But whenever I was
Always
like, oh my God, what all this is hiding from me? How are you? You know, what all this is hiding from me? Good, good. How are you?
Yeah, like
Good to see you. It's been a while. Well, come on.
Oh, yeah.
then we have to change her to somebody else.
Next to us say something, but it's not done. We're done. Just up
Oh,
there towards the area. Where the what it was the students did. I know it's Robin.
So tomorrow is under the treatment. I'm not playing that one. It was totally good. Maybe in like 30
So that would be something that we could bring to your yes, sir. On that first table in the front.
You want to go grab it?
No, I'm slow. I look like about halfway down, don't make it, then I'm
Okay.
But I get it. I don't know how
I don't see the left side. Oh, yeah.
it's always
Yes, I just
I like to watch it.
2015. She went and she was certified as a blow and 100 instructor.
You can't even show you're on the fast
But I wow. It was just something that, you know, I just looked at it before.
Yes, you tell me.
Because she was so
A lot of good Rustin, G28.
She 14. Women, you just never know. I don't know the weight and all that stuff.
So I'm like, oh, so I was right.
Okay.
I have
We had 3 that day to my one. She was I think that's all about for me was just the alcohol.
See, Chiefs Association, I've been the president. Russ wants me to try to have our meetings because
Like in my mind, I just like
takes questions.
The data can be integrated a lot better. This conversation seems exciting about
She left
she's so cute.
She's come around as a partner. She worked in DCFS and volunteers for justice and kind of stayed through. And then I snapped her back to St. Helena Parish Sheriff's Office. Well, April 1st. She called me. But she's still not
I'm looking at it right now. We have 1, 2,
she was one of our sergeants, and she was like
Linda informed me she's not going to make it.
and over there, she was their juvenile detective.
Okay, so he still is. Okay, so okay.
I gotta wait till board commission let me know that.
Yeah, I'll probably send them over, and I'll probably got,
We're taking them out. You know, they gotta send them.
I'll probably got
So
one or two.
And then I think the lady that does
So Fletcher's still here.
she just walked.
Oh, good. Okay. Hey,
Your name is, just grab the name and grab the seat. Yes.
Jonathan.
All right, how are you?
No, that was even as a proxy. Ended up with a sticker. Yeah,
So he's who you guys I have some stickers. Oh, you got it. Oh, he does.
Yeah, everyone has one.
And then, so maybe we do have.
I have seen Marcel because he's not.
Was he? You know what? I don't want to use him for deal. Just because he's so I'm going to process it.
Okay.
I will tell you, Jacqueline's here as a proxy for that.
Okay, then there you go.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Jacqueline. Since you're proxy for Norma today,
We need
you really sort of need to. Yeah, you need to sort of.
Hello, Director Heisen. Hello, Director.
Yes.
Hey,
I know you might
hello.
know.
Good to see you.
How about
Oh, thank you.
you? Always see this, right?
Because you have two big ones, so you have to throw that out. Yeah.
Always something to do.
Yep.
Walking 10 miles.
Yes.
Thank you for coming. And this has been like, hey, Adrian, I just want to say hello.
I have one that's
Your path. I've got walking hair. You too.
You got to turn yours around.
switch my music.
No,
That's me. No, look, I'm ready.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
That's great. That works.
For her, because they had the sign for the thing.
So do we have microphones? Yes, we do. So exciting. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to gavel us in because I actually have a gavel in this venue, and I'm excited to use it. And Judge Marcel, if you have, your robe in your car, maybe I could.
You are the presiding body.
Okay. Welcome, everyone, to this second quarterly meeting of the Governor's Impaired Driving Task Force. This, is a new place. Our place is new, but our mission's the same, right? So thank you all for coming. There have been a lot of changes in getting us here today. There was a moment where we thought we might actually have to cancel the meeting, which is blasphemy when you think about the work that we have to do. We have to be on it at all times. We can't miss an opportunity. So thank you to Dr. Polk and her team for, getting us this new place, which I think you said you wanted to meet here from this point forward, right?
I mean, come on now.
My only
Who wouldn't
complaint,
want to?
right, my only complaint is that this is very well lit compared to the press room. And so, lighting can expose a variety of sins. This is not good for me. So I want to go back to that lounge effect. Anyway, so good morning, everyone, to those of you who are new. I'm Lisa Freeman. I'm the Governor's representative for Highway Safety for the state. I'm also the Executive Director of the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission, and I get to chair wherever this meeting happens. I get to chair it, thankfully. I'm going to do some introductions first because I think that's what's on the screen. But then I want to tee up, some of what we'll be doing today and why we're doing it. So with the introductions moment, I'm going to turn to my left and start with Mr. Sinkfield. Yes, please.
I'm John Sinkfield, Executive Counsel to Attorney General Liz Murrill, and I'm her designee at this commission. Her designee at this commission. I got it, I think.
And he never misses a meeting or a work group opportunity, so thank you, sir. Adrian.
Adrian McRae, DOTD. I'm the Highway Safety Administrator on behalf of the Secretary of DOTD.
I'm Robin Tibble with Office of Motor Vehicles. I'm the administrator over reinstatement.
Sean Owen, State Police.
Louisiana State Police, Carmel, Rebecca Chaston here.
Gerald Sticker, Sheriff of Tangipahoa Parish, on behalf of the Louisiana Sheriff's Association.
Sunny Wall, Executive Director of MAD Louisiana.
Fletcher Hyacinth, the Director of the Drug and Specialty Court Office at the Louisiana Supreme Court.
Shane Gibson, Greenwood Police Department, at-large appointee.
I'm Jacqueline Sanchez, TSRP for the Louisiana District Attorneys Association, but standing in for Norma Dubois today.
Dr. Leslie Byrne Freeman. I serve as the Director of Prevention, Wellness, and Workplace Development at the Office of Behavioral Health, so I'm representing the Department of Health.
Cortalia Meeves, Prevention Systems Manager, Office of Drug Policy, Office of Behavioral Health.
Dr. Shayla Polk, Office of Drug Policy and the Strategic Community Initiatives for the Office of the Governor.
And to our folks in the audience, I think most of us know who we are, but we do have some new faces. I know you don't have the advantage of a microphone, but I think you all have good lung capacity. So, Terry, you want to start us off?
Terry Schutz, Highway Safety Commission.
Joey Jones, North Louisiana Crime Lab.
Bridget Bailey, Kansas Parish Government.
Bobby Breland, Traffic Safety Consultant for Louisiana Highway Safety Commission. Billy Douglas, Highway Safety Commission.
Shanita Vasquez, Louisiana Highway Safety Commission.
Steve Wilkerson, Louisiana Highway Safety Commission.
Donna Mallard, Smart Start, Louisiana.
Edwin Schneider, MSU.
Thank you.
I'm an emergency physician at University of Madison at the Level 1 Trauma Center.
And a former member of the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission Board of Commissioners. I might add, you're too modest, Dr. Elder. Sam.
I'm Sam Robinson. I'm the Associate Director at the LSU Social Research and Evaluation Center.
I'm Tim Marcel. I'm the Judicial Outreach Liaison for the Highway Safety Commission.
Good morning. Dorothy Cummins, Deputy Director at the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission.
I'm Kathy Childers. I'm a consultant on impaired driving for the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission.
Randy Landau, Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries.
Dr. Emily Tilley, Executive Director at O'Brien House. I think I might be the only person not affiliated with the Highway Safety Commission.
We came in force, Dr. Tilley. Yes, ma'am.
She's helping us out with the screens.
Oh, and thank you so much for your tech contribution today. Dr. Polk says you're helping out in various ways. Thank you so much. So that leads us to the next point of order, which is our old business on the agenda. I'm going to hope and cross my fingers that we get through this, because I think on our last visit together at our February meeting, there were some hiccups. So hopefully we're a little more streamlined this go around. The minutes from both the November meeting last year, November 19th, as well as the minutes from February 11th of this year were sent to you in advance of today's meeting. So hopefully you did have a chance to review them. Also, hopefully you had a chance to concur with the content of those minutes. So if I could get a separate motion from some member of our task force, Mr. Sinkfield moves to approve the minutes from November 19th. Can I get a second? Okay, who is that? Owens? Yes, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hallelujah. The minutes from November 19th of last year have now been passed. Can I get another motion to approve the minutes from February 11th? Mr. Sinkfield, that's once again. A second, once again, by, is it Sergeant? No, it's Lieutenant. Lieutenant Owens. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank goodness. Okay, no hiccups today. At this point, we are following the Attorney General's protocol with conducting the best kind of open meetings and public meetings possible, so we are going to pause for any public comment. We do that twice in our meeting today and this point forward. So this is our first opportunity. If there's anyone present who wants to make a public comment, if not, we will then just progress to new business. Anyone wanting to share? Okay, then we'll proceed. So the new business is going to bring us 3 individuals who really need no introduction. We will, however, introduce them. But you all know them. You know the good work that they do. When I was talking earlier about teeing up, the presentation, I wanted to reflect and go back to that first meeting of this year. Most of you in this room were present on February 11th. We began that meeting, the first quarterly meeting of 2026, with a mission moment. The mission moment person who was spotlighted was Sergeant Jason Martin of the Baton Rouge Police Department. We saw the video that led him to be, highlighted for what should not have been a sacrifice in his life, but what wound up, taking his leg as he was working overtime for DWI enforcement some years ago. And it was an impaired driver, impaired on polysubstances, alcohol, as well as marijuana, and perhaps even some narcotics, I think, in the mix, who, while he was out, in the field doing his enforcement duties, he was struck. And the reason, if you recall, that he really absorbed the brunt of that collision was because he went to help his fellow officer who was also working with him and who apparently was not in a position to get out of the way in time. And so that officer also has a permanent injury. I think he lost part of his foot. So there are real consequences, to what we do when we gather here, when people come from North Louisiana, from the New Orleans area, from all parts of the state, so that we can, think of ways to prevent the preventable. And when you hear Jason Martin's story, and he's only a representative of so many people out there whose names we may not know, but whose absences are still profound. We began this year's meeting that way, and we began last year's meeting in a similar way with an in memoriam moment. And it was the Simmons family, if you recall, in 2025, we began that series of task force meetings spotlighting their loss, which was just absolutely devastating. They didn't lose one of their children. Those parents and siblings, they lost 3 of their siblings. The parents lost 3 of their children. The mother, if you recall, she now goes from day to day carrying, a grave cleaning kit for 3 graves for her children who were taken prematurely. That, is something obviously that resonates with anyone. You don't have to be in the field that we're in. You don't have to come to these meetings or be on this board. And so sometimes going, starting at the beginning is important. And that was why we've begun both of the last 2 years' meetings with the why. What is the beginning? What is that starting point for what we do? And it's so that we don't have to hear more Jason Martin stories or Simmons family stories. We're all working in our respective positions and spaces to satisfy that mission. I always assume that everyone in a room knows what everybody else in the room does. That's a bad assumption. I know what Jacqueline does because I used to be a prosecutor. But except for that, I likely wouldn't appreciate the full scope and breadth of what she does day to day. I've been in a room with judges in courtrooms, but again, if you haven't been in that space, you may not understand what Judge Marcel is trying to accomplish, in his mission to meet with judges and to instruct them and to make them, more educated about impaired driving. If you're not a law enforcement officer, or you haven't been arrested, maybe, hopefully not, then maybe you don't get, the whole, the gig of law enforcement. And so Randy Lanou is, that person. He is definitely a poster child for what an absolute high caliber law enforcement officer should be. And so what we've done is we've assembled the 3 of them today to sort of share with you all, what they do. Because you may not know everything that goes into their job, you know, their official duties and sometimes the duties that they just have to take on either voluntarily or in a voluntold kind of way. We have unintentional silos, you know, we all operate in. And I think that the more we understand and communicate about what each of us does, and the more I understand what Dr. Jones is doing in North Louisiana with his crime lab, and what Rebecca's doing as chemistry manager at LSP's crime lab, then I get how maybe we can interact. And those are the flashpoints. Those are the moments where we can all intersect, you know, and do some strategic planning. So that is the tee up to today's presentation. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Sergeant Lanou so that he can make us smarter about what he, as you know, you're with Wildlife and Fisheries, but also just in impaired driving, even if you weren't in that zone, if you were any law enforcement officer doing impaired driving enforcement.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Randy Lanou. Just a little bit, because some of y'all maybe hadn't met some of y'all. I have I'm going on 44 years now law enforcement total. 16 years Department of Corrections, 10 years Central Sheriff's Department. I've been here 20 years now. One of the things I do at Wildlife and Fisheries is, of course, I work patrol enforcement, and I'm assigned to Ascension and Livingston parishes. That's my main assignment. But also teach at the training academy. One of my big peeves, if you will, is impaired driving training. I'm an SFST instructor, and toxicology instructor. I'm a DRE instructor. One of the things that I want to talk about today is, and I just left one of our in-service sessions with our agents, is the future of impaired driving and how the statute has changed. The statute now is what it's always should have been. It's about impairment. You know, since we've, in my opinion, you know, we've stripped out the scheduled drugs, we've stripped out the affirmative defense for if you're on prescription of drugs. If a person's impaired, they're impaired. When I approach an impaired driver, I worry about, one, are you impaired? I don't worry about the substance right now. Alcohol impairment is pretty easy. I mean, I don't want to say easy, but it's fairly easy to detect, especially when you have these guys that are 2.0s and stuff like that. When you get to the 08s and even somebody that doesn't necessarily have to be an 08, they can be an 07. They have a low tolerance. They could be an 05, 06, something like that. And they're impaired. They look just like somebody that was a 2. So one of the things that we stress in our training is that it's about the impairment. And the future, in my opinion, and we stress through training, is the DRE role. And we talk about drugs. And you know, I am a DRE. I'm one of the senior DRE instructors. That program is run by Sergeant Jared David. He's the state coordinator of Louisiana State Police, and they do a great job. We just finished a class. We just certified 11 people a couple of weeks ago. So I think throughout the state we have, I forget the number, but it's close to 200 DREs. And what you get is, a lot of times is, well, and you get this from officers, is, why do I have to do this? Why call a DRE when I can just do a blood test? Well, here's the thing about blood tests and all these other things, and Rebecca can talk to you about this too, and Dr. Jones. The blood is the transport system for the drug, is what it is. It's not going to stay there forever. Alcohol is a little different. It metabolizes a little bit different. It's there for a longer. So yeah, you can kind of gauge a BAC, but drugs are completely different. And I use THC, for example. It's a perfect example. You know, you have about a 2 or 3 hour window, give or take, to grab the THC itself. It's the active THC. Other than that, you're going to metabolize something like that. The duration of THC in the body, though, duration of effects, lasts up to 12 hours. All the blood is doing is transporting that THC to the brain, depositing, and then it's going to the remainder is going to metabolize out the body. So when you get the blood test back, THC carboxy, because it took you 3, maybe 4 hours, but this person's still experiencing effects of THC. Drug impairment does not always manifest itself the same way alcohol impairment manifests itself. And you have to be trained to recognize that, and that's what the DRE does. The DRE, it's not just a fly-by-night class. It's an extensive training that it's the next level. It's the advanced DWI. And like I tell my people all the time, is, look, I'm not maybe not be the smartest guy in the room. All right, I'm not saying I'm the smartest guy in the room. I'm just trained better than you are, and so I recognize things as a DRE that the lay person out there may not recognize, that this person is impaired, and the average person may allow them to go on about their way and not make that arrest. So, famous thing I like to say, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. I just got to figure out why it's a duck. All right. So, you know, and since I've been a DRE since 2013, I've got 247 evaluations. Not all of them have been arrests, resulted in arrest. I've got like 5 medical rule-outs. I've got, I think it's 5 or 6 no impairments or no opinions or other than impaired on drugs or alcohol. So it's, you know, I believe that the DRE program is the future and needs to be. I don't think we're focusing on that enough sometimes, not us, but, you know, in general. I think that it helps you explain what this impairment is, why this person is impaired. When I get this blood back and it's got this metabolite of this particular drug, I as a DRE can sit down and I can explain that to you. And I think there's a gap, and we were talking about it earlier, I think there's a gap, and it's nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault between what I as a law enforcement officer see when I'm on the road and I make this arrest versus what the prosecutor understands, because they don't always have the understanding of. One of the classes we've been teaching to the prosecutors is HGN, and understanding what HGN alone means, lack of smooth pursuit. You'd be surprised how people, they don't really understand what's the big deal about having lack of smooth pursuit. Well, it affects your vision, it affects your reaction time. So a person that has just lack of smooth pursuit but doesn't have max deviation or these other, you know, or onset prior to 45, you're beginning to become impaired. It's affecting the way you're operating your vehicle, your vessel, whatever. In my case, vessels, obviously. You know, we had a crash this weekend in the sheriff's parish right there, in Tangipahoa. It's not alcohol related. It's going to be drug related. I had 2 DREs there with him. The guy refused to do an evaluation, but I've got 2 guys that there are trained, and it was a bad crash, that are trained. Yeah, he didn't submit to the evaluation, but they know what they're looking at. They're able to articulate how this man is impaired. And this is going to be a test case, because some of the stuff was prescription medication, but he was extremely impaired. All right, and so that it's what it's always been about. And I believe the DRE program, the DRE, that's what we're about. That's what we're there for. In my department, when we have a crash, a serious bodily injury, or death, we're required. We have to have a DRE there to help assess the driver or the operator if we can. So, and for people that don't understand what the DRE program is, it's drug recognition expert. The name is kind of a little bit misleading, if you will, and it's, I would rather be drug impaired recognition, but that's the name of the program. But I come out and I do an evaluation. It's taking about 45 minutes to do an evaluation of someone, you know, maybe given the time, and it's a 12-step process, and it's a proven process. It's backed up by science. And at the end of that evaluation, I can't tell you specifically what somebody is impaired. I can't say he's impaired on Xanax. I probably know what the drug trend is in my area. Me and Rebecca communicate a lot. And so I know what's trending right now. So it's probably might be Xanax, it might be this, might be that. But I can tell you what category it is. All right. I can tell you if this person is impaired, and if it's chemically impaired, or I should be able to, let me rephrase that. I should be able to tell you if it's chemically impaired, medically induced, or if there's some other reason, all right? And as a DRE, majority of my evaluations, yes, some of them come from my arrest, but a lot of them come from, I'm doing it for sheriff's officers, I'm doing it for city police officers and stuff like that, and assisting them. And I get called out all the time to go do evaluations. So I believe, with the way the statute is structured now, that's an important role. And because if I take a person, we were talking about video cameras and stuff like that earlier, video cameras we don't have them right now at Wildlife Fisheries. We're getting them. They can help you or they can hurt you, because you as a prosecutor or a judge, whoever the case may be, you may not see or understand and interpreting things that I'm interpreting, because I'm sitting here looking. You can't really see HGN on a camera, the way the cameras are facing, stuff like that. So there's certain things that You know, if you put somebody, you see body sway, if I have them standing against a white background, you know, or a solid colored background, then you're not going to see that body sway. Whereas if I put their back against a fence or something or a tree, where you can see that body sway. So it's all in positioning whenever you're doing your field sobriety, when you're using a camera. So, you know, if I don't do my job and I don't do my job correctly in the field and I don't articulate my report correctly, we were talking about reports earlier, and we have to train these officers, and what we emphasize on is your report. If I don't do these things correctly, then she can't do her job. And if she can't do her job, the judge can't do his job. All right. So, and I think we're all a team together. If I fail, then they're gonna fail. You know, they're not gonna fail, but they're not gonna be able to be successful. So it's imperative when I'm out there on the side of the road, and a lot of people don't realize this, because I get this question a lot. Well, you're wilding fisheries, you know, what are you doing? Arresting drunk squirrels, you know, something like that. Yeah, kind of, sort of. You ever seen? I got a video of a drunk raccoon, actually. But it's like, no, yeah, we're in the boating world, all right? But doesn't mean that we're not going to arrest people on the side of the road. Absolutely. We arrest DWI on the side of the road all the time, you know, and our people are trained to do that. And I tell them, we're not going to call somebody to come do what you're trained to do. All right. One of the things that I also say is, and it's a saying that I have, and people kind of adopt it. And I say this in all modesty. All right. I don't mean this, but I don't like talking about Randy Laneau, but I've won a lot of DWI awards. All right. But I don't look at that as an award for the people that I arrested. I look at it as the people that I saved, because every impaired driver that you put in jail, then you're stopping the potential of a fatality or somebody getting killed that night. All right, a guy might drive 100 times and not get caught and not catch him one night, but he might get out there and drive one time and go kill somebody. All right, and that's the whole, you know, that's the whole thing in a nutshell. You are safe. I don't look as impaired driving as an accident. It's choice. All right, you know you shouldn't have done this. All right, and here we are. And it's kind of like, here we are now, it's me and you, so this is going to happen. Well, I've arrested a lot of people that I know, friends of mine, and they all understand that. But I think that part of the deal with go back to the way that the statute is structured now, it's what it's always should have been about. It's about impairment, and I believe the DRE can play a major role in helping that, in helping interpret that impairment. It can help the DA in interpreting certain types of things. I've been called in periodically by some DAs to help them interpret impaired driving cases, whether it be drugs, alcohol, those kinds of things. So it all starts with training. These officers have to be trained correctly, and then articulation, and then having a relationship with your prosecutors and your judges, and make sure everybody understands what this type of evidence means, because it can be pretty technical. It can get pretty, you know, a lot of guys are fearful of doing DWIs because they can. There's a whole industry out there to fight me. All right. I mean, they have conferences just on impaired driving, you know, and it's a big money market. And so I have to be, I may not necessarily be the smartest guy in the room, but I have to be the smartest guy in the room on that day. All right. And so, you know, I welcome challenges. I don't mind. I do not mind being put on the witness stand. I will testify in a heartbeat. And I don't get nervous. And that's one of the things that we try to work our people through is understand that kind of thing. So, I mean, I hope I addressed the things that you were wanting to address today. But I can't, you know, I'm here to champion the DRE program. Absolutely. It goes hand in hand with impaired driving and the way the direction that impaired driving is taking now. You know, it's not just because you have, I hate to say this, but just because you have THC in your system, we have medical marijuana now. Just because you may have cocaine in your system. The way the statute's written now, my interpretation, does not mean you're impaired anymore. Now I have to prove impairment. We took all that out, which is good. I agree. And it's any substance when taken in a human body can impair a person's ability to operate a vehicle safely. So that's any substance. It could be anything. You could buy something off the counter. And then the DRE comes in and he helps you articulate on how to articulate that impairment and say, yes, this person's impaired, or no, this person is not impaired due to medical reasons or whatever. So, anybody have any questions of me?
You deserve a round of applause.
Yes.
This is day for 40 plus years. I think that that's just, it's amazing. I want to thank you for mentioning, giving props about the change in the law, because actually, Randy, you've been coming to these meetings, and I call you Randy. Sergeant.
Oh, absolutely.
Of course I do. But you've been coming to these meetings forever. You know that was something that came out of the DWI task force. So when I say that we are a working group, not that you need me to tell you what you've accomplished, but it is nice sometimes to look back and reflect on some of those successes. And I think you're right. The law is now where it really does need to be. It takes the onus off of, was it this or was it anything when taken into the human body that impairs you so you can't safely operate a vehicle? Done. That's it. It's clean cut. And I think it does help you do your job wherever that job takes you. And, for people in the room who don't know that wildlife and fisheries, and you in particular, are everywhere. You are like a man for all places. People think you're on the water. Well, you are, right? But you're on land too. And, there were some conversations we've had over the years, and I even got this question recently at the legislature about, enforcement, because highway safety funding, for instance, the feds do not allow highway safety to fund things that aren't on land, okay? But the way you get to that water is a landing, is a boat landing. You don't just happen to be on a barge or on a party rig or anything just from the sky. You get there by transporting yourself. And the fact that Wildlife and Fisheries and other enforcement agencies are enforcing along those corridors, I think it's like, it's something that is important and necessary.
A perfect example, like you just said, like last weekend was Tickfall 200. A lot of people know it's a big party on the water. We arrested 6 DWI Saturday night. Started, it was at 5:30 we started. And by midnight we had 6. So that's 6 people we pulled off the water that were going to be in vehicles driving home, pulling 24, 25-foot boats behind them. So you're preventing the possibility of that happening on the road, so that absolutely, and so it's kind of a twofold deal, because, for whatever reason, people born in Louisiana think when you buy a boat, it comes with a lifetime supply of alcohol. and they like to party up, especially bar work. We've got bars on the river. Cherokee Day, he deals with them too over there. We've got Blind River Bar, Prop Stop, and they party it up. So, but every time you take somebody off the river, you're stopping them from getting to a car, so.
Does anybody have questions or comments? I knew you would, Rebecca. Do you have a microphone so everybody can hear you?
I think
I think we can hear Rebecca,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
I just want to reiterate what Randy said. I'm part of some of the classes that he puts on for his cadets and other DRE programs, and I do a lot of teaching for Jacqueline for her LDAA programs, and I work a lot with Joey. But my statement that I always say, and I did have the privilege of doing a presentation with Judge Marcel recently, and I need to incorporate more defense attorney training actually into my repertoire, because a lot of them are not educated on the DRE program. I had one defense attorney come up to me afterwards and say, that's hocus pocus. That's magic bippity boppity boo. I said, it's not magic bippity boppity boo. It's based on medical science. It's based on blood pressure. Do you tell your doctor to his face, I do not have high blood pressure?
Right.
Do you say my cholesterol is fine when it's in the red? I'm like, you don't do that. It's based on pulse rate, the way the eye reacts. It's a whole program. So I always tell my people when I present is the crime lab report is not there to live in a vacuum. Is there to support the observations and testimony of the law enforcement officer. When we get the tube of blood in, and Joey can attest to this too, that tube of blood does not do the walk and turn, it does not do the one leg stand, and it doesn't have eyeballs. So we can only extrapolate what we find based upon their conclusions. So I always say the present in any DWI case is a well-trained, well-articulated, well-documented law enforcement officer, SFST, A-RIDE, or DRE. We're just the bow on top. Because we can't live in a vacuum, because it's like reading tea leaves without that description of the behavior of the person operating the motor vehicle. And I know Joey gets this phone call, hey, I got this crime lab report, it has 15 drugs in it, were they impaired? And you're like, I don't know based on that. I need much more information. I need the report from the officer, and it gets us in a sticky situation when we can't support the officer's testimony in a vacuum because we don't have that good, well-documented, articulated information from the law enforcement officer to say, yes, pinpoint pupils could have been caused by the opioid I found or whatever. So yeah, I can't champion the DRE program enough, and I wish we could get more DREs, and I know y'all always actively seeking out more and more. And I know it is a very, very complex certificate to attain, and a lot of them try desperately to make sure they keep that throughout their life. And I think Joey was just telling a story of a chief of police over in California that won't give it up because it was the hardest thing he ever did.
Yeah.
So I champion that program and can't speak volumes enough.
You know, and I've heard, to your point, okay, that these people truly are experts. So you can really rely on the science that they're bringing, you know, to the case, to the courtroom. You know, and with all due respect to Dr. Elder, who went all the way through medical school, you know, DREs, they do a significant amount of that kind of training. I mean, so much so to where I've been told they almost are the equivalent of, like, I don't know, a physician's assistant, but they're up there. And so it's very, you know, intense training. It is reliable training. It's just a matter of making sure we have, you know, the coterie, the numbers that we need. And I wasn't aware that we were almost up to 200. I knew we were in the 150 zone. So, you know, that puts Louisiana, I think, in really high territory, because not other states that are even bigger states with more resources have those kind of numbers. And there's a need, right, Randy?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, next to state police, I mean, we have more DREs than anybody. We have 22 wildlife officials, and we have them in all regions throughout the state. You know, just like state police, they have them through all the troops, and you know, we're available to sheriff's officers, anybody. I mean, that's part of the program. We're on call to any agency 24 hours a day, and just like state police is. And yeah, I mean, that we have absolutely. There's to me, there's a need for them because, like I say, the direction that the statute is going now, it's not, you can't just go with what's in the blood. I mean, you still have to, I have to convince the judge that, you know, that just, you know, okay, yeah, this guy has THC. Well, okay, well, he's got a prescription for it. You know, okay, well, how was he impaired? I have to convince you, I'm going to have to convince a jury, you know, and I'm an absolute believer in, our department does, and I'm an absolute believer in, when you have a serious bodily injury, or crash, and just like I told my in-service class today, look, whether you do DWIs or not, you know, that's your business, all right? I can't force somebody to go out there and do DWIs. You got to do quality work when you do it. But the one place that you cannot make a mistake is when you get called at that crash at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I have a mother dead, 2 kids dead, and I've been in these positions, all right, where I've got people that are dead, and I've got victims' families, and they're looking for answers, and I'm the person that's going to give them answers. And if I can't give them answers correct, you are now a champion, if you will. Excuse me. You are now a champion, if you will. You're seeking justice for these victims. So once I let this evidence walk away, or maybe I'll just do a blood test, whatever the case may be, once this evidence is gone, I can't go back and recreate that evidence. It's gone forever. It's not like a structure or something where I can go back and recreate it or rebuild it. Once impaired driving evidence walks away, it's done. It's over with. So the critical atonement is the first hour or two after following that accident when we get our hands on these operators. And it may be somebody that's in a stretcher or whatever. You know, I may have to go to the hospital. But that's where the evidence, the collection at that time, and it's going to be physical evidence, blood evidence, all these types of things. But that's imperative. You cannot make a mistake at that point when you're working a crash. And whether you're big into DWIs or not, like I tell them, that's the important. That's why we make our agents, our regular agents, and it's no slight to anybody, to any of our agents. I just had this conversation with some guys this morning. But these DREs are going to be there. They're going to come and help you. I'm not going to take that away from you, the investigation away from you, but I'm going to make sure that the impaired portion is addressed at that point. So.
Well, they're called experts for a reason, DREs. Yes, yeah. Okay, so I have a question for you. Anybody else have questions or comments? Okay, and I'm going to ask Jacqueline this, and I'm going to ask Judge Marcel this as well. If you had a magic wand at this moment in time, given, you know, what the complexion and landscape of DWI is, what what would, how would you waive it? What would you be like your number one thing on your wish list?
I'm all about training. I am absolutely about training with look, we do a good job in this state and of training our people. State police, I teach with state police and side by side, and we both as departments do. The LSA does a good job. They do a good job of that. But I'm all about training. I'm all about, I think every agent or every officer in this should be trained on impaired driving. Now, obviously SFST, those types of things, and also AROD. AROD is something that absolutely people can be trained on, but there's not a lot of participation a lot of times in these AROD classes. But I take that back. Sometimes there are, sometimes they don't. But that's the border. That's before DRE. That's just a basic knowledge of somebody's drug impaired. So that's, I think, training. I said training. I mean, and we have to, as law enforcement, you have to be trained. You have to be trained on.
Well, okay. So to that point, that's your wish. Are there any holes that we know of, that you know of, that we could all be flocking to?
I mean,
without, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot by saying, where is there nothing happening where there should be something happening?
Well, like with my department, it's unlike, we're kind of unique. I can focus a tremendous amount of time on training. We can focus a tremendous amount of time on enforcement, because during the summertime, during the wintertime, and we're dealing with hunters and fishermen, that kind of thing. But during the summertime, when we're out there in recreational, we're focused on impaired driving. That's what we're doing.
Right.
We don't have to answer other calls like the sheriff's office does and stuff like that. We don't. So it doesn't. We're there. That's what we're there for. When I go to work in the mornings and I get on the river, I'm there. I'm looking for a DWI. So it's. I don't know how you could kind of fix that. I don't know. I think offering more training, stuff like that.
Okay, well, does everybody know that you were like the greatest thing since sliced bread? I mean, no, Wildlife and Fisheries, that we are available literally 24/7 for training, to show up at the scene of, a fatal crash or a non-fatal crash. How do you get the word out, if you still need to, for all these, because we have so many agencies? And Chief, I mean, you're from an agency that's not metropolitan, right? Yes. You would say. So, from a more rural spot, or an isolated spot in the state, how do those officers get the same kind of help and lifeline that, Randy's offering in the way of expertise? How do you see that happening?
Well, I've got a DRE on staff, so
that's right.
I guess 6 or 7 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
So we took that step and sent him to get certified. But my understanding is we can call the desk over at Troop G, Lieutenant, if our DRE isn't available, and there's a list of DREs, or maybe y'all got DREs on staff. It's not a difficult process. It's just getting the information out to the smaller agencies. But I think one thing that is probably problematic in Louisiana is, I think there's 330 police chiefs in the state of Louisiana, and there's like 301 municipalities, and there's a large majority of those that are one-person departments. They've just got their elected police chief, and that elected police chief may have been a librarian before he got elected, may have been a trash truck driver before he got elected. He doesn't have the law enforcement experience to, when he shows up on scene, to know what he's looking at and know to call for a DRE.
Well, Terry, you know how I put everybody on the spot just because you're in the room, right? Like, you come to the meeting, like, be ready. So, okay, for everyone who doesn't know this, Captain Terry Schutz, retired, who's now with Highway Safety. He is the program manager for all the police traffic services contracts that we have with agencies throughout the state. Could you speak to like what highway safety's doing, and even if there's something else that we could be doing? I mean, now's an opportunity to share and to make arrangements to fill any gaps that exist.
Well, right now we have a number of AROD training classes. I think we have 3 scheduled that we fund in addition
Terry,
to the ones that they're.
tell everybody what ARIDE is.
I'm sorry. Advanced roadside.
Impaired driving
enforcement. We have those contracted out through Louisiana State Police Applied Technology. They're scheduling those. They're also teaching those throughout the state that's not funded by us. So that's why when you kind of hint, did you want to speak to it? I don't know what the numbers are.
Right,
I can only tell you
course.
which classes that they've done and that they have scheduled. So other entities that are doing it, I'm not aware of. We fund the DRE training, and it's an extremely expensive training. When you look at what you get out of it, it's one of those, you're not getting a Yugo and paying for a BMW. You're getting a BMW that you're paying for a BMW. And that some people would debate that because of the cost of it, but when you look at what you get out of it, what it brings to the state, you heard what he said, and those of us in the room, we're all party to it. We kind of get it because we dance in to that tune. We understand their importance that the public may not see. When you tell somebody that the course is 9 days of the most intense academic physiology and pharmacology, I can tell you when the program started, I know my academic background, I was not prepared to take it. I didn't even try. Brought the program back, but I wouldn't even attend it because I knew how difficult it was, and I didn't want to shame myself. But I'll say that publicly now. Anyway, the guys that go through it, we have people that have been through, on staff at LSP, there's a nurse practitioner, still qualified, certified nurse practitioner, and he'll tell you that this class was harder than any class he took getting to his certification as nurse practitioner. That's real. That's how difficult this thing is. So what these guys go through and bring to the table is so incredible. To say it's hocus pocus, and I've heard that before, but I've also heard that about HGN and all the other field sobriety tests too. I get where it's easy to say that to someone who doesn't know any better, but when you're looking at the 12-step process, the classes of drugs that they have to identify, the accuracy level at which they have to do it, it's incredible. But getting back to what we're offering, we're continuing to try to fund the program and develop the program throughout the state. And me and Jared David at Applied Tech, we talked yesterday, we talked last week. We're talking almost on a weekly basis about improvements of the overall program in trying to support what's in the grant application and what's going on throughout the state.
So we need more of same, right?
Yeah,
There's
more
just
of the same. More
Yeah.
of the same.
Good
Yes.
deal. Good deal.
If I had my wish list, it's I guess a little
Yes,
bit more.
what is your wish list, Terry Sheets?
Well, a more strategic application of the AROD training throughout the state, and a little bit more recognition of it. And I'm going to pick on my sheriff in here, my chief in here, and I know both of y'all. The support from the Sheriff's Association, Chiefs Association, with posts and trying to get this marketed out to the line guys, because what really sucks, and I can tell you this from personal experience from when back in my day on the road, is when you get a tox screen back from a fatal crash that you didn't even suspect impairment, and they have a pharmacy on board. It is quite embarrassing, and getting officers trained to identify those types of things, like he said, on the scene, the guy spot on that night, 220, approximately 220 DREs statewide for 64 parishes. Let's start doing some math on that. You break it down. At any one time, you got only 30% of those working because they're working 12-hour shifts and days off. So now you're down to statewide, you got about 50 people working statewide as DREs on shift at night in 64 parishes. Building that number up would be astronomical. To support that number by having the AROD trained guy. The AROD trained guy can really substantiate when you need to call that DRE and wake him up out of bed. By his initial gathering of that evidence in that critical hour following a crash. So that's why I'm a big proponent of the AROD program. I know how expensive the DRE program is, but I think that intermediate step is something that could be better addressed.
Yeah, I agree that the AROD program is absolutely, it's basic drug SFST, if you will. You know,
Yeah.
And it's because it always, drug, and I go back to it, drug impairment doesn't always manifest itself the way alcohol impairment does. You know? So you have to be able to recognize that. And the other thing, you know, and we try to do this, I try to do every time I teach a class, SFST class, whatever, we invite prosecutors and stuff, because we're trying to close that gap, that knowledge gap to everybody. So I didn't mean to get so long-winded. I'm sorry.
No, that was
terrific.
terrific. That was good stuff.
I believe in it. So.
Good stuff. Okay, Ms. Sanchez, you're up. I think the construct of this room is like not really, you know, hospitable to the audience being told. I mean, it's sort of like you're making your case, right, in court. So I'm sorry that. Well, however, I mean, you know, your back will be to everyone, but I think, you know, etiquette aside, that's okay.
So, good morning. I am Jacqueline Sanchez. I am the Traffic Safety Resource Prosecutor for the Louisiana District Attorneys Association, and I have the good fortune of working on a grant through the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission. I want to first apologize to everyone in the room. I don't like speaking off the cuff. It is not my favorite thing. However, I sent in my slides yesterday and immediately got a call from our IT department that said, "Hey, your computer's been compromised. Shut it down immediately." And I said, "Oh, okay. I just sent out some slides. Are those okay?" And he said, "I cannot guarantee the safety of those slides. So in order to protect all of you from also being compromised, we don't have slides today, and I hope that you will bear with me and forgive me."
We feel protected, thank you.
Good. I'm here to protect you guys, contractor board, everybody. So I had the good fortune last week of convening with my fellow TSRPs at God's very worst hotel in Little Rock, Arkansas. Yes, but we made it back and we're good to go. And one of our icebreakers was find someone in the room who had a different career before they started as a TSRP. And I raised my hand and I said, I taught for 3 years before I went to law school. And jokingly, another TSRP leaned over and said, "No, Jacqueline, you have to have had a different career before this one." And truly, the role of the TSRP is one of education. And that's really what I wanted to hit on today, about how we all kind of work together as this big unit to try and educate our law enforcement, our prosecutors, and how that role is becoming more and more important as we see more impaired driving in different forms and fashions. So we're really working together in this space to keep everybody safer. So part of that role in education is keeping up with recent case law developments. I'm constantly logging into Westlaw to see if there's a new case somewhere. I'm sending out updates. I'm monitoring the session as it's developing, making everyone aware of what's happening in that space, anything that's going to impact our impaired driving prosecution or law enforcement. Part of that education also comes in the form of training, like Randy said. We work together very frequently. I put together 2 trainings a year that are exclusively devoted to impaired driving. And these are a day and a half trainings where we have law enforcement and prosecutors in the room, because I think my magic wand would be getting everybody together, because I think it's so important, learning from each other, interacting, because we can find where those holes are whenever we get both law enforcement in the room, prosecutors in the room, and figuring out, where are we falling short. So I have those trainings. I also have impaired driving tracks at all of our separate Louisiana District Attorneys Association trainings, where we're getting people in the room. We're getting Sergeant Lanou is always helping out with me, and also Judge Marcel and I will be presenting next month actually on a U.S. Supreme Court case that's impacting the impaired driving space. Rebecca is always willing to come out, so is Dr. Jones. It's really a team effort in getting all of this information out to everyone. And we're working to better serve our prosecutors who are on the line day to day actually doing the work. Like I mentioned earlier, I am Louisiana's TSRP, but I am one of many. Every state, I believe every state has at least one TSRP, if not more than one. A lot of them are housed in similarly situated organizations like mine. Some are in the AG's office, some are elsewhere. But we get together at least once a year at our big conference. And we get to network with each other, figure out what are you seeing, what are the problems in your jurisdiction, what are your unique problems that might be starting to pop up across the country. So we're able to do that and come together and figure out how to best serve everyone in our states. Recently, I had a prosecutor reach out regarding auto brewery syndrome. And I won't pretend to be a scientist, but because of my network, I was able to contact Dr. Joey Jones about this. And essentially, if auto brewery syndrome is essentially where the microbes in your gut, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, are fermenting carbohydrates and will essentially make a person seem or will be impaired. They will have a registerable BAC without having consumed any alcohol. So this was what defense was claiming. I contacted Dr. Joey Jones. I was able to contact my TSRPs in other states saying, hey, are you guys seeing this right now? Is this popping up? And yes, a couple of them were saying this was kind of an older thing that's circling back around now. I was able to, because of that TSRP network, pull in resources, pull in studies that I could give to my prosecutor that they otherwise would not have had access to. So it's all part of being part of that network and working together. Let's see. So we were able to kind of cut off the defense of, no, officer, I wasn't drinking, it was just my microbes. And, you know, we're able to better serve those prosecutors. Finally, I can't talk about educating without being also a cheerleader. Through a separate grant from the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission, we have housed at the LDA a forensic toxicology grant. So I've worked to kind of promote this grant and let all of our prosecutors and district attorneys know about this. We are able to provide forensic toxicology services through Dr. Joey Jones and others in our state and across the country, really, to our prosecutors who might not otherwise be able to afford those forensic toxicology services in impaired driving cases. So we're really excited to have taken on this grant after Dr. Jones' successful pilot program and kind of grow this out and continue working on building those networks and becoming a better system for our prosecutors. Really, all of that to say is that I am fortunate enough to stand on the shoulders of giants. I get to do the work that I do in this field because of all of you in this room, and I'm so thankful for you guys, and that's what I've got. Thank you.
And we are standing on your shoulders too, so you're pretty gigantic in the space that you fill. Seriously, so just accept that. Any questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Can you send me that information on auto brewery just in case one of my scientists get asked on the stand? Okay.
See, I love that. You know what you just shared, your story about auto brewery syndrome or whatever it is.
Yeah, I found that out.
Because you know, if you didn't have access to Dr. Jones, what could you teach your prosecutors about, you know, standing up to that kind of, you know, load of you know what?
I'd also like to say, impairment is still impairment. Even if your microbes are making you impaired, you're still impaired.
Right. But at least, I mean, that brings in an affirmative defense, you know, to offset. I remember a million years ago, when I was prosecuting this case, the defense lawyer comes in and says, my client was swaying because it was so evident on the video. And back then it was VHS. Do y'all know what VHS? It wasn't Betamax, but it was, close. And I mean, it was just so discernible. But the answer, according to the defense lawyer, was because the client had Meniere's disease. I'm like, isn't that the sauce on fish? And they're like, yes, but it's also this syndrome where it affects your, Dr. Elder, all right, it affects your inner ear and affects, it's like sort of a vertigo related thing. And so it causes you to sway, okay? Doesn't cause you to emit an odor of alcoholic beverages, which also attended the case. But because I had access to a doctor, not as smart as Dr. Jones, but one nonetheless who said, okay, here's what you look for, and if there's nothing documented, and this person all of a sudden developed Meniere's disease just for the case, then it wasn't a charted condition throughout their life. So having access to people and talking about things, that's the antidote, right? That's the thing. That old saying about the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. If we're not all
Make them shake hands.
Make them shake hands. Make them touch. Touching is okay in that way. And so, you want, your wish list, your big item, I think it's great. It makes sense to get everybody in the same room as you can to talk about these things, because when you know better, you do better. And you're doing just that. So, does anybody have a question about that forensic toxicology program that she was pitching? Because we want people to use those dollars that are waiting to be used, especially in jurisdictions that don't have all the dollars on their own. Because when you hire one, defense lawyers cost money. I don't know if y'all are aware of that. And, to Rebecca's point, to Randy's point, it's an industry. You're paying for the BMW, Terry, or whatever it is, of defense lawyering. So you've got to have some kind of parity on the other side, some equivalency of expertise. So these highway safety dollars go to, having an opportunity to have an expert for the prosecution, especially in jurisdictions that, just can't afford it. Joey.
I guess on this, for Jacqueline and you, we have a case going to trial tomorrow morning at Thibodeau with this, and so I'm going to meet with the prosecutor after our meeting today. So it's getting hopefully used.
Yeah, I think that's like our first official
that's great.
completion.
Christine Russell's always on the cutting edge of everything.
Yes, she's
her
wonderful.
DA's office, she's wonderful. Yeah.
Well, and if I could just mention that even though my analysts are experts, they're experts at analyzing the blood. They're experts at taking that blood sample, utilizing our instrumentation, coming up with results, and testifying to the way they reach those results. Yes, I found oxycodone at 25 nanograms per mil, but they are not trained, such as Joey is trained, to expound upon what that number can mean potentially, because there's a therapeutic level and there's non-therapeutic, and because that's not their background. Their background is to do the analysis, to write the report, and give them the results. Now, it's supported greatly if we have a DRE, but not every case do we have a DRE. So that is when these forensic experts like a Joey Jones comes in and they get all of the information, soup to nuts. And I just found out what that actually means, which was pretty fun. But evidently back in the olden days, meals used to start off with soup and end with nuts. It was really weird. So anyway, I digress. So that is why these individuals are so important, is because they are there to discuss our report with the law officers' observations and then draw those conclusions upon impairment, which is something my analysts do not have the ability to do.
Good clarification. Yeah. Anybody else?
I have a quick question, just thinking a little bit differently about this. I know you said that the primary purpose of the toxicology services is related to impaired driving cases. What about situations that may involve a specialty court where there are, let's say, sanctions imposed because individuals have tested positive and they're claiming they want to have a hearing or a trial related to the same, and sometimes those things require sometimes evidentiary issues that may be resolved by a toxicologist. I don't know if this is also applicable for the program that you've got going, but do you all provide toxicology services in that instance? And if you do you all have maybe the opportunity for Zoom sessions where the expert can be examined in court via Zoom, where both the prosecution and defense counsel can ask questions?
So, as far as the grant works, we're only able to provide those services for those impaired driving cases. Once somebody's in that drug court, I think that's beyond our ability to provide services.
But that doesn't mean that that issue and you know, funding discussions can't ensue. True. Because I'll be honest with you, I never thought about the use or the need for an expert when people challenge, you know, because the sanctions are about to come crashing down on them. And it's like, I really wasn't impaired. I have auto brewery, you know, whatever. And so you need to have the expert come in. Maybe that's the whole point of why we meet and have those little issues and try to troubleshoot. That was excellent, Fletcher. Okay. We have other things to talk about now because of that. Thank you. Judge, you are up.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Since we're talking about disorders, let me begin by introducing myself. My name is Tim Marcel, and I suffer from constructive dissatisfaction. Just a little background. I know I'm acquainted with everyone, but I don't know everyone. So let me introduce myself a little more. I am currently serving on the Louisiana Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal, in addition to being the Judicial Outreach Liaison for the state of Louisiana. Prior to serving on the Fifth Circuit, I was on the 29th Judicial District Court for St. Charles Parish, where I served for 9 years. In that role, I heard everything from traffic tickets to murder cases. I became deeply involved in specialty courts, working as the presiding judge on our drug court, as well as creating a juvenile treatment court for that docket. I say I suffer from constructive dissatisfaction. For those who don't know what that potentially means, as I define it, is I always look for, and I can't help myself, look for ways that systems can improve. I have been given this unique opportunity to be a public servant in the role of a judge. And I hold deep the belief that there's no greater honor that a community can bestow on one of its fellow citizens is to serve as its judge. So that imparts an obligation that I feel. And so while I was a trial court judge, as I mentioned, I was a drug court judge. So I educated myself outside of my primary duties to be a better drug court judge. I was involved in my community speaking to school children, because that's part of the obligation that you have when you hold a job like this. And so my purpose has been to make my community safer, always. And the role of a judge is not always popular. Sometimes we're called upon to make decisions that, quite frankly, people don't like. Sometimes decisions get made that cause threats to be made against the judge's life. But that's the job. We don't make decisions by polls or what's most popular. So we've dedicated ourselves to this proposition that the rule of law is supreme, and we take our oath to apply the law to the facts as we find them and make decisions. And when we make decisions in impaired driving cases, our goal is twofold, is to bring justice to victims, but also to protect the community from it happening again. And those are tough calls. So when I had this opportunity a year ago to perform this service for my community, my state, it was a tremendous welcomed opportunity, because addressing impaired driving in Louisiana, and I think in most states, has three elements. There's the law, there's custom, and there's culture. See, from a judicial perspective, in the job that I had before this one, only a small percentage of the cases that appeared on my criminal docket involved impaired driving. And they were a challenge for the first reason, for the first element I'm going to talk about, which is the law. The law on first of all, impaired driving is illegal. And there is a statutory scheme for addressing findings of probable cause, conditions of bail, the elements which must be proven by the prosecutor in order to convict, and then there's sentencing. And because impaired driving is such a complicated problem in our society, our laws are very complicated. And for a judge who only spends a small amount of time addressing that, it can be quite frustrating. So in my role as an educator, one of the first projects I undertook was creating a bench book, a document that a judge could have on his or her bench that would serve as a manual of the laws that they have to apply. The hope is that by creating a simpler presentation of the law, it will be administered more accurately in accordance with what the legislature intends. I've also had the opportunity last year to present for the Louisiana Judicial College at 2 different seminars, and it was my introduction to, as the JOL, to my colleagues. I'd been a judge for 10 years. Most of them knew me. I was very active in the District Judges Association, but now I had a new role that I need to inform them of. So I presented to them what were the changes in the law that were made in 2024 and 2025. And those presentations were received by approximately 250 judges. When completed, the bench book, which was crafted not just on my own, but with the assistance of Kathy Childers and Dorothy Cummings and Norma Dubois, was distributed to every judicial officer in Louisiana, approximately 350 people. This year, I received a request from the Judicial College, from judges who want to learn more about drug-impaired driving. So what it's going to give me the opportunity to do in June and again in August is to take knowledge I learned sitting in Sergeant Lanew's DRE training, which I sat through and went to the practicums, and tell judges, this is the type of evidence you can expect to receive when a prosecutor brings a drug-impaired driving case. You're going to hear about horizontal gaze nystagmus. You're going to hear about lack of smooth pursuit. You're going to hear about the Romberg. And the seven categories of intoxicating substances. But I'm also going to be able to, after speaking with Dr. Jones and Rebecca Chasson, talk about what does it mean when there's nystagmus? How does that affect the operator's motor skill to safely drive a car? When your eyes flicker, that means there are gaps in your visual field. Or when you're doing a Romberg, it's about, can you manage divided attention tasks? Because driving a car requires multiple, what's the right word for it?
Divided attention, you have multiple tasks, you got to multitask.
Multitasking.
Yes.
And you know, judges generally are pretty smart people. So they like, what does this really mean when I hear about nystagmus? in what I hear about divided attention. So when that evidence is presented, they've heard it before. There is a bill in the legislature right now that is going to make evidence-based screening mandatory for everyone convicted of an impaired driving offense. Supporting that mission, we composed a email alert or newsletter to the judges to say, hey, this is what a screen is, and this is what a screen isn't. This is what an assessment is. This is what an assessment isn't. So when that does become law, there's a better understanding of what they're to apply. That covers the legal element. I also see my role as taking into account to custom. We are a non-unified court system in Louisiana. There are some 41 judicial districts. There are 320 municipalities. 302 municipalities that all have judges. So there is not one single way that the state of Louisiana addresses impaired driving. So to learn about what is done in different places, let me back up. When I speak of custom, the best way I can explain it for my purposes is, well, the way we always did it here. Because every place does it a little differently. So, to learn what the customs are around the state, I've made some visits. I've gone to First Parish Court in Jefferson and talked to Judge Olivier, who shared with me a treatment program that she houses for people who are diagnosed with a substance use disorder that have been convicted of an impaired driving offense. Really impressive program. Found out how she pays for it and who's eligible to go. Filed that away. Ms. Sanchez and I went down to the 17th Judicial District and met with Christine Russell, who walked us through the assessment program that she's using in Lafourche Parish. Cutting edge, identifying offenders that are likely to recidivate. I went up to the 22nd Judicial District and met with a group that runs the pretrial program. They're one of the only few jurisdictions in the state that is taking advantage of Article 320 of the Code of Criminal Procedure that allows for drug testing following an arrest. How they do it. What's their target population? What testing are they doing? How do they pay for it? Because that's the question that everybody has. Okay, that sounds like a great program. How are we going to pay for it? So it's learning those components of different programs that are currently being used in different parts of the state that can be potentially shared with other places that want to do, that also have constructive dissatisfaction. And also, the other reason is to understand the customs of a place allows for the fashioning of a lesson plan, if you will, Ms. Sanchez, to better communicate what best practices are around impaired driving. All right, the final element is culture. And this is the toughest one. It is my assessment that we are in a 4-decade epidemic of addiction in this country. And one of the places that this epidemic manifests is in our justice system, particularly in impaired driving. We are in what has been described as one of the most dangerous eras of our times when it comes to the availability and proliferation of addictive substances. They are more potent, they're more addictive, and they're more legal. And in order to address impaired driving effectively, in my estimation, is we have to look at the culture as a whole. Part of my efforts, restart again. Common question that most people have around addiction and impaired driving in particular is, why does someone who has been arrested for impaired driving do it again? We need to answer that question. We have, this group, people in this room have made extraordinary progress in making our roads safer. We still have a challenge ahead of us. And understanding the culture, understanding the neuroscience, we can go further to reduce recidivism. I'm also, in my role as the state outreach liaison, part of a national cohort of judges who do the same thing I do in their states. And I was in Austin, Texas last weekend with a group. We have formed a pre-trial work group to research, investigate what are best pre-trial practices for identifying the high-risk impaired driving offender. Data is pretty much universal that 2/3 of those arrested for an impaired driving offense will not recidivate. That arrest is enough to change the behavior. For 1/3, the arrest doesn't do it. There are opportunities that other states have taken advantage of in pre-trial. And let me kind of do a little detour here because I'm going to get into some areas I need to give context to. Typical impaired driving offense isn't completely resolved with a trial or a plea for 6 to 12 months. The impaired driver, typically particularly on a misdemeanor, will bail out while those charges are pending. I heard it said recently, and I agree, that it is highly unlikely for someone who commits an armed robbery to recidivate while waiting trial. For an impaired driver, it's highly likely that they will recidivate while awaiting trial. The ignition intercept is very effective for preventing an alcohol impaired driver from driving. But when I drive on I-10 with the ventilation in my auto's air conditioning system closed, I'm afraid I'm getting a contact high. We can't stop cannabis impaired drivers from operating a vehicle with an interlock. So we have to find a solution. And so this work group is about studying what's done in different states across the country. In some states, there are statewide programs where the legislature has created a special program that's operated statewide. Wyoming, Colorado, Nevada, mostly in the West. In some places, like Duluth, Minnesota, there are courts that have created programs specifically for that jurisdiction. El Paso, Texas is another one. So the purpose is to learn what are the processes and programs that are proving effective to reduce recidivism both while awaiting trial and post-conviction. The goal, I think, for every judge, or a goal for every judge, is what is going to bring about behavior change. What is going to keep my community safer by preventing this person from making another victim to this criminal conduct. It is a unique opportunity for me personally to have this opportunity to have a seat at the table where conversations are had that my kids and my grandkids may live in a safer world than I did. So I appreciate this opportunity. Look, I'll have to close with this. I am a sitting judge. I have dockets. I have opinions to write. I don't golf. I don't fish. For this point in my life, I pursue fulfilling what I believe my purpose is, that my God put me here for. So just to make sure it's clear, because it has been said that, as appellate court judges, y'all don't really work, do you? I say, yeah, I work. I just have a flexible schedule. Just want to make sure there's no misunderstandings, Ms. Cummins. But and look, and this is the other wonderful thing that's come to my life as a result of this opportunity, is I get to work with people like you all, and who have a common purpose. I love being a part of a team, right? I played ball in high school. I grew up. I like passing the ball to the person who made the shot. That gave me the thing. So that's my role. I'm the guy. I'm gonna pass you the ball and let you make the shot. And I'm passing the ball to the judges, my colleagues, and let them make the shot. So thank you for allowing me to be here with you this morning. It's always a pleasure and privilege to see you all. Any questions?
I have questions, but I want to give you
I'm standing. Look, I'm
huge
sorry.
round of applause.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ms. Freeman.
Yes, sir.
I feel like the litigants that were before me 2 weeks ago, standing in front of the panel making my argument, and it's like, okay, now it's time for the hot bench
You're the well.
the bench to heat up.
That was amazing. Yeah, and let me just say, okay, you're passing, the shots to others. You're making quite a few on your own.
Well,
I mean, that is like amazing.
They do. You do count assist. They do. John Stockton, I think, does he still have the assist record? Does anybody know? I mean, John Stockton went into the Hall of Fame by passing the ball to others. So I'm okay with that.
Right.
I don't need to be the leading scorer.
Right, as long as the thing gets dunked, right?
As
We're
long as
talking
it gets
basketball,
done.
right? Okay. What I want to congratulate you at all these new, courses that you've charted, because you are like, I don't know, Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock and the whole Enterprise team roll together.
Don't make fun of my ears, please.
No, I'm a Trekkie, the original
I'm
series.
teasing.
No, but you're going places that, we, the state, and wonderful team members in the state have really not been. And so you're forging ahead, and I think it's wonderful. And I think that there is this appetite for what you're bringing, when judges who do have, huge dockets and maybe, some tee times on the golf course as well. They're busy, but they take time to say, hey, we want more.
Mm-hmm.
They're requesting more training, more information. That's a coup. That doesn't happen unless what you are providing is really, it's yummy stuff and everybody wants to eat it up. And I think that the reason that what you are putting out there is so delicious. I was on the receiving end, the audience end of the presentation that you and Rebecca, your debut presentation,
Our
right?
debut duet.
The debut duet. And people are going to have encore performances or request them. But the table I was sitting at, they were saying, everybody in the room was just really receptive to the oral fluids presentation that you were giving. But the constant comment was, I understand what he's saying. I get what she's saying. When you make things digestible, you know, to Sergeant Lanou's point, I don't have to be the smartest person there. I just have to make sure that what needs to be said or taught gets conveyed. And whatever that medium is, whatever words you choose, and you too, Rebecca, y'all are hitting the mark. And that's a talent. Because, you know, a lot of smart people can go in a room and use, you know, $50 words and think that they really, you know, had everybody's attention, when really everybody was just too, you know, stunned to say anything because they don't get any of it. People get what you're saying.
Well,
and I love the fact you've come at it from a very practical and user-friendly way.
Well, when you got a dead-eye shooter like I did that morning with Rebecca, I just kept passing her the ball. And she just kept sinking every basket. I mean, she was showing
The
off.
entire year, the only year I played basketball. Just know that. I'm terrible.
Yes, Fletcher.
I've had the pleasure, of course, of working with Judge Marcel for a number of years, and I will also comment about the fact that there are a number of things that judges also handle in terms of on the bench. They handle, quite frankly, a docket that is hard to take care of within any given year. A lot of people don't know this, but a number of people on the specialty court get paid, right? That includes your coordinator, your case manager, folks that do the drug testing, definitely the clinicians, of course, all the counselors and so on. One of the folks that never gets paid is the judge. Even in some jurisdictions, you'll have sometimes the DA's office may get a portion of the payment. Public defenders sometimes will get a payment. The judge never gets paid for their work on the specialty courts, whether it's a DWI court or a drug court. They don't get paid any additional, but it does require extra work on their part. And time after time, year after year, judges put in that extra effort, Judge Marcel including. When you go to the Court of Appeals, you handle cases that come up on appeal, right? And a lot of folks are aware that the Supreme Court handles a number of cases that are big ticket cases. They decide constitutional issues. But before you ever get to the Supreme Court, you've got to go through the Court of Appeals. You've got to go through Judge Marcel's court, or one like it in the number of different Court of Appeals in the state. So there's definitely a docket that he handles as well. When you move from the district level to the Court of Appeals level, you're not normally involved in any aspect of dealing with any of the specialty courts, because at that point, you've moved on to a different classification and you're not usually involved. Judge Marcel has not only been involved in handling that by offering up his time above and beyond as a district court, but he's done so as well in the Court of Appeals, which I think is quite frankly exceptional. And I'm happy to also endorse any of the things that he's saying here, because I know he does so because of the passion that he has for what he's doing rather than any payment that he's ever received. But I also wanted to point out, I guess, the fact that he continues to actively work with his extra time, not fishing or being on the golf course, to try to support specialty courts and DWI courts in the state. And he does so by doing education for folks that are judges who frankly lean on his expertise to, I guess, get to the position that they're in and having to decide difficult cases. But doing all of that is something that he does without getting any extra payment, and oftentimes without getting any extra recognition. And so, as much as I know this is a time that has a lot allocated for questions, I wanted to just simply state we appreciate all of the efforts that Judge Marcel has done and continues to do in supporting our specialty courts throughout the state. And I was there, of course, when Rebecca did their duet at the annual conference, and they did an exceptional job. But I just wanted to say thank you, Judge, for everything that you've done.
Thank you, Fletcher.
I would also like to say, echoing in what Fletcher said, now I met you many years ago. I'm not sure if y'all all, and same with Sergeant Lanou, I'm not sure if y'all take Benjamin Button vitamins or what it is, but you don't age so fast, so share that secret. All that, no, really. Judge Marcel, years ago, approached MAD because St. Charles Parish at the time did not have a VIP program. And he reached out and he said, hey, we're interested in this. And so from there, we formed the Victim Impact Panel that's still going on today. And I went to the first few for a while, and he had his whole team sit in there every single time there was a panel at night. And it spoke volumes and volumes to me because, as Fletcher just said, the passion that you have, and all of us, you have to have, if you want to do something or make any difference, we all have to have passion. And obviously, we're in a room full of people that way. But to see you again, was it last year that you came? Okay, yeah. And it took me, it was exciting. It wasn't just it wasn't a surprise because I saw it years ago, but it was very nice to see you come aboard with this. And you know, it means so much. There's so much education that needs to be learned. And you know, sharing that with others and other judges and whatnot, if you knew the amount, and you do, I'm sure, of victims that I hear crying about why is this happening in the courts, what's going on with the laws, all the things, you know, you're going to make a big difference. And I just want to commend you on what you do. So we're glad you're here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Very kind. Too generous.
Well, your higher power called and said to tell you that you are doing an excellent job.
Thank you.
And you're going to get your wish list because you're just going to get more opportunities to work with the team that has been assembled to keep, you know, making the shots or passing it for the shot. So thank you, Judge.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have some work group report outs. You know, not all work groups is not apples to apples. Some have been able to meet, and some are, you know, still, you know, at more ground level for this year, figuring out what the game plan is. But whatever it is, it is. And so for now, Adrian, I'm going to defer to you. You still are de facto the work group lead for work group 1. If you want to make any comments about the direction or, you know, sort of the impasse that you're at, the stopping point that work group 1 is at. Or Robin, if you wanted to be, you're on that work group as well. Y'all can do a double team.
Okay. I'm not quite sure I was prepared for this. So we had a really productive year last year. I think that's the last couple report outs I've given. I think the big gaps that we have is some of the citation information, adjudication information, right? Tying back to the driver. So we're real excited about OMV's new project. They're going to be kicking off really soon. I think there's a lot of rumblings going on. All the meetings that I'm in, I'm very excited. I'm just like sitting, waiting for September, I think is the big date for them. So Robin can give an update on that. But as far as the work group goes, I think we're looking for a leader,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Or co-leads, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll be available to help. You know, we have really good momentum with Crash and Roadway. We're driving there. I think the big gap we had is more the driver, which I feel like is not really DOTD's expertise. Right. So anyways, we're going to be relying really heavily on OMV with this new database for sure. So we'll hear available to help as we move forward when we get the new leaders established.
Right. And Robin, did you want to give any voice to, like, you know, some of what's afoot at OMV?
I mean, I can just say that we're really excited about the new system because of the amount of data that we're going to be able to get from it that we just can't get right now. So that's just what we're super excited about, and it's just going to be we're going to be able to provide so much more information to this committee. It's amazing.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Well, just to be able to query the data. I think that's what we discovered last year through our working group is, okay, what do you got? And we got it, and we're like, oh, what does it mean? And how do we get it? And I don't know, like the mainframe is not quite established in the right way that we're used to seeing data now in the new world, you know, so.
Yeah, because currently it's just a screenshot of what we have at that moment that we run it. Otherwise, we can't, if it's been modified or changed, we can't go back to what it was previously. We only know at that time. So.
And they'll have more flexibility with queries.
Yes.
So people like us that sit on this group, you know, our wish list, we can at least ask them, is it even possible? And they'll be able to tell us if it's possible.
And I think when you're trying to mine data, you always get to a sort of a stop, not a stopping point, but you are in a holding pattern until new systems develop or you crack a code to get into something else. And, you know, Dr. Schneider is on contract with Highway Safety, and he's here today. And Dr. Schneider, if you can project, you are going to be working on so that you can actually inform this body of some data that you're going to be getting, hopefully from OMV sources. Isn't that right, that we discussed?
Right. In August, it's that I'm working on merging data about DWI arrests, alcohol and drug arrests from the regular and traffic Maryville to get kind of some insight into what percentage actually gets convicted DWI.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and we're going to look forward to that because there are some opportunities ahead. So, yes, more to come. More to come. Work Group 2, Norma is not here, but Jacqueline, are you prepared just to sort of give a little bit of context to what Work Group 2, where they are?
So speaking of standing on the shoulders of giants, Norma asked me to fill in for her today. So I'm sorry that you get me. And Kathy, if you have anything to add, feel free to jump in. So we've been looking at potential future legislation, and two things have kind of come up that I think we're going to work towards in the next couple of years. The first is the DWI cleansing period. And I was tasked with looking into what other states are doing. And of course, all of that research is on my compromised laptop. But we were talking about the possibility of expanding that cleansing period to perhaps 20 years. What I did find, and what I can recall offhand, is that Maine has an interesting approach to their cleansing period. There's a lifetime look back for felony DWIs. And once you have that felony, every other DWI after that is a felony. So I think that that's an interesting approach, and I will be bringing that back to the work group once we meet again. The other possible piece of legislation we've been discussing are enhanced DWI penalties when the offense occurs in a school or a work zone. And we don't have the data in like my realm to be able to say how many that we're seeing of these kinds of cases. However, anecdotally, tragically, just a couple weeks ago, we did lose a crossing guard to a possible impaired driver. And I wanted to say her name, Kathy Wells, was killed earlier this month by a suspected drunk driver. So it's happening. It's something that I think that we should look at, and we're going to keep working on that. Because next year is a fiscal session, we talked about kind of strategically looking at these bills and how we'd like to run them. The work zone possibly for next year's session, and maybe waiting till 2028 to look at the cleansing period.
Good deal.
Did I miss anything, Kathy? Are we good?
Good deal.
Okay.
Thank you. Sunny, you want to report out for Work Group 3?
Sure. We are one of the groups that is kind of, I wouldn't say at ground level. We're a little bit above ground level. We have a few things that we're working on. And Work Group 3 is prevention and countermeasures. So a couple of things that we've worked on were, the bench cards for judges to understand the ignition interlock and whatnot. And we were also looking to work on, and still are, law enforcement cards for referencing of what to look for and how ignition interlock works. And being that we have still a very busy session with legislature happening, and Donna Mallard has been amazing at helping me with some facts and bullet points and whatnot. But some things are kind of changing, and we will improvise that and reconvene on that. And I also have a couple of ideas for the future that I'm hoping we can look at. And one of them just being simple stated, as we discussed, I believe, in one of the meetings. Oftentimes when we speak, or victims are there to speak and testify in front of legislature about their loved ones and how impaired driving has impacted their lives. I'll go sometimes, and even if not need be, but I'll kind of build a platform there to present them to come to that, moment where they can speak. All that to say, oftentimes legislature, the problem with so many different things is money. Money this, money that, money this, money that. It's all this costs, you want this money, this, that, and the other. So I've kind of thought about, for whenever the next availability for me to be able to help prep a platform for these victims is to give them a little sticker shock of their own and how much it costs. Doctor presented, last year on, last year on the cost of what it is when a DWI fatality occurs, or just DWI is, insurance, all those things. So I just wanted to throw that in there in the hopes that it catches attention. But we still have work to do with our preventative and countermeasures, and we're ready to get that taken care of.
That economic piece is always, it grabs people's attention. If they have any kind of fatigue on the human loss factor, you start talking about dollars and you really wake them up. So I think, DWI is tragic in so many ways, but when people start looking at the economic consequences, that is smart and strategic on your part. Bridget Bailey for Work Group 4. And thank you for making the trip today.
No problem. Thank you. We've been working on our letter for dissemination for our course star, Dr. Joey Jones's video for if you feel spacey, you drive spacey. We have a dissemination plan in place of what we're going to do to push this out. We're tweaking the letter right now because what the group also decided we need to have a way to track who is seeing and viewing the video throughout the state. So we're working on kind of fine-tuning what that will look like. We want to include that link in the letter that we will actually be pushing out to some of those youth organizations statewide. We really hope to have that kind of streamlined before our next meeting in August. Maybe we can start pushing that out when school starts back. Some other things that we're working on from our group as well, we've been discussing is coming up with some possible media messaging surrounding drug driving and what that looks like, and as well including the cost, our local communities, our local residents, related to not just alcohol, but just those other overarching, the plethora of impairing substances that are so available in our communities, and making our citizens aware of, it may say that it's a supplement and it's safe, but really if it's impairing you, that's still putting everyone else at risk. So our group's going to be convening to kind of come up with what we think should be some messaging, what the focus should be, and how to really push that messaging out there in the coming months. So that's sort of where we're at right now. Another aspect was discussed is to review the legislation that passes this session. That really can be something that we can help promote or bring some awareness to once the session's over and bills have been signed and we know what is actually in play, some ways to bring that messaging and information and how that will affect our public safety, our roadways related to changes in legislation and law.
Yeah, y'all are on track, for sure. And you basically teed up, Kathy, you're going to present on what are the legislative updates. You have time. You just have to be, not long-winded like I am.
I'm just nervous because there's another group that's meeting in this room.
They're going to be fine.
Right after us.
They're going to be fine.
So I'll be faster than I planned. I'm not going to talk to you about all the bills. I was going to talk to you about all the impaired driving bills, but I think I will now just limit myself to the bills that you all have either endorsed or that have come up through the work group too.
That's perfect.
And that's a total of 4 bills. And the exciting news is they are sailing through. In my 35 years of watching impaired driving legislation go through the legislature, and probably half of that I was the one pushing it, I've never seen such a successful legislative session. It's awesome. It is awesome. So anyway, House Bills 69 and 82, those both came out of Work Group 2, and they were authored by Representative Villio, who's got committee going on right now at the Capitol, which is why she's not here.
Right.
69 was the one that addressed interlock when it's a condition of something other than probation, because the current law says that there's a violation if you don't install when you are ordered to do so as a condition of probation. But we know now that there are other conditions that people are ordered to, or judges order offenders to install. And so those have now been captured in the proposed legislation. That one, of course, my screen disappeared. That one has made it through the entire session. It's waiting for the governor's signature. House Bill 82 was the other bill. That's the one that increased the penalty for second and subsequent offense, DWI offense, if one of the predicates was a like vehicular homicide, vehicular injuring, or third-degree feticide. That one, too, has made it completely through the session and awaits the governor's signature. And just to as a reminder, if a bill is sent to the governor, he has 10 days from when he receives it to either sign it or veto it or do nothing, unless he gets it within the last 10 days of the legislative session, at which time he has then 20 days to act. So if he signs it or does nothing, it becomes law. If he vetoes it, then that starts a whole other process. So anyway, and I only say that because one of Vilio's other bills that I was going to talk to you about has gone into effect, but the governor didn't sign it. So he received it, the 10 days lapsed, and it became effective. So it'll be interesting to see. I suspect he will sign those. The other one that the third one that came out of Work Group 2 is House Bill 492, and that's the one that would turn this task force that is presently an executive order into a statute. So it would statutorily create this task force. That is awaiting its last, it's completely made it through the House. It is scheduled to be heard by Judiciary B Committee on the Senate side, which only meets on Wednesdays, and it's not on today's agenda, and they have not posted next week's agenda. I think we're okay, but we're kind of getting to the part of the session where if a committee only meets weekly, they need to hear it, so it'll have time to do the rest of what it needs to do. But I do think we're okay. So that one, again, needs to go through the Senate. And then the fourth one was not one that arose from this committee, but it's the one we've already heard a little bit about, the bill to require screening for substance use disorder on first and second offense DWI. But you all endorsed it. And that one, I am pleased to say, completely passed through the legislature. It received its last vote Monday on the House floor, and it has been sent to the governor, and he will sign it, because I am told that when he was aware of this bill, he got very excited about it, and made it part of his package, which is why we've had Dr. Polk at every hearing representing the governor. So that's been very, very exciting. There are some people in this room that have attempted or attempted to pass this or were cheerleaders for this for decades. Like Dr. Freeman, you're one of them. So I'm trying to remember all of you, because there will be a bill signing ceremony. This is the one we named after Judge Edwards, the previous judicial liaison who served on this very task force, because it was his dream, and a lot of us worked on it with him, and the intent was always to put it before the legislative session this session. But of course, he died in 2024 before he could do that. So we did it for him. Anyway, there are lots of other ones, and I can send you my legislative update, and it's almost changing daily at this point at this session. But if you have any questions or want to hear about any of the other bills, just let me know. I'll be happy to talk to you about it.
That's great news, though, that everything that came out of this body,
everything, you're batting a
is,
thousand.
as you put it, sailing through, which is not a term that you usually talk about any package.
In my entire 35 years of doing
Good
this.
stuff.
There's always that one bill that either doesn't make it or gets watered down so much you almost wish it didn't make it. These aren't even getting amended. I mean, if there's an amendment, a couple of them have been amended, but in a way that made them better. So it's just amazing. So thank you. I think this says something for you all that people respect, because what they're told is the governor's impaired driving task force has reviewed this legislation and recommends its passage. So I think what they're hearing is these people who are experts have looked at this more closely than we can look at this in 3-minute testimonies, which is what each person has. So they're deferring to your expertise. So think about that, because I won't be here much longer. Think about that in the future years so that you can, know that your voice carries a lot of weight and y'all can get some stuff done. It's very exciting.
I've always thought that this,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. And thanks to everyone in the room and beyond who made it happen. I've always thought that this group, had gravitas. And so when you see, that kind of wind at the back of these bills, I think that's just, proof that is the case. So let me also just interject right now that we're not taking up, and we're past the hour, and thank you for remaining. We're not taking up that resolution that we had discussed at the February meeting about the task force taking a position on recreational and commercial marijuana, the legalization of it. We're going to defer that to probably the August meeting, but I just want to put everyone on notice so that the membership knows that will be coming up for a vote. So with that, we are now rounding the end. Dr. Polk, any drug policy updates that we need to know about?
Currently, no updates.
Okay, thank you. Member agency updates? Anyone wanting to share what's going on in their respective, positions and agencies? Chief, you have something?
I have one small thing. Dr. Jones, help me with that phone call you made to me earlier this week. What was that drug that we identified?
No, yeah, at the Drug Policy Board, I had made an announcement to several of you that were in the room that we were detecting a spread of a novel opioid called cyclorphine, which is a morphine type drug. No human studies on it, but it's probably estimated in a test tube to be 5 times more potent than fentanyl. And so in April, we had detected a spread into, if I remember right, it was DeSoto Parish as well as Washita Parish. And then sure enough, on Monday, Chief Gibson brings some M30 tablets to the lab, or staff does. And we tested it, and sure enough, in Caddo Parish again, a more recent case where we're still seeing cyclorphine.
Well, with that, that's one of those non-scheduled that the change in law that we pushed helped. And that was actually a DWI case. I forgot to mention that to you the other day.
That's incredible.
So she refused to give a blood draw, but it was actually a DWI case that I was involved in. So
Can you imagine 5 times the, potency of fentanyl? I mean, who would think that somebody could actually craft that?
well, I sat there and watched her while I was running the intoxilizer. It was pretty impressive how often she fell asleep. So.
I believe we have a coroner in one of the parishes that has it as contributory towards death, but to see it as a DUI, it's crazy.
So that's all I have.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
I have just one update. Our law enforcement recognition event is going to be held earlier this year. It's less than 4 weeks out. It'll be Wednesday, June 10th, from 11:30 to 1:30, I believe. Yeah. And it's going to be a great event. I just wanted to let you know. And if you're not coming, come anyway. So I'll look forward to seeing you all real soon.
Thank you, Sonny.
Sure.
You always have good attendance. In fact, I think you've had to get a bigger venue because of so many people. That's a nice problem to have.
It's a good problem for sure to increase the budget on that part. But also, that being said, it'll be held at the Price LeBlanc Pace Center in Gonzales. And that's where she's speaking in reference to. That's our bigger event. So hope to see some of you there. All of you.
For sure. Any other public comments? Oh, agency updates? No? Public comment. I'm just trying to roll right through this. Apparently there's another group coming in after us.
I have one very quick.
Yes, thank you.
We are in procurement stages of getting our procurement to go out to bid for our oral fluid kits in conjunction with our blood alcohol kits. So we're hoping that the contract for all 3 kits, the postmortem, BU, and OF kits, are going to be taken by the same company. That's great. And so once they go out for bid, we'll let you know that. And then once we get the bid winner, we'll be able to order those kits and then start with Applied Tech training our officers and getting them certified to collect oral fluids.
That's awesome.
Can I ask a quick question? Where are we on the Title 55
We have signed all of our documents at the crime lab and pushed it to our legal department. As soon as it gets posted for promulgation, I can let you know, but I think a lot of our legal people are being caught up with the legislature right now.
When was it sent to legal? I'm just curious.
We signed the documents, I think it was either late February or early March. Like Chad, my captain, had to sign off on it as the POC for the lab. So we sent all of that wording and everything to them, and he signed all of the fiscal notes, which there is no fiscal note, essentially, because eventually we're hoping that the amount of blood kits and oral fluid kits will teeter out, and we're going to be ordering the same amount and not adding more kits to that order, because we're hoping the oral fluid program, if they give a breath sample, they'll give the oral fluid sample, and there will be no blood. So that's an ideal world. So
You'll get there.
yes.
Yes, good deal. Public comment, anyone? No public comment. I think that brings us to an adjournment. Please look at where the next meetings are. Our next meeting is going to be August 12th, but not in this room, hopefully back at the Capitol. Thank you all for being so adaptable today. This was incredible. Y'all get extra credit for coming in, from places beyond today. Thank you. We're adjourned.
I think we brought them
Thank you for being chair.
But thank you so much. I would have been still wondering
I want to talk to you.
When I walked,
It was good. It was good.
Jack, raining when news starts to leave.
That is correct. That is correct. Especially if we're well intentioned.
yes.
I do that. I didn't want to put you on the spot. It was just,
Oh, right. Now to find out we're back there.